The auditorium was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the muffled snickers from the back row. Tom stood frozen, his calloused hands gripping the edge of his janitor's cart, the one he'd pushed through these gleaming corporate halls for 15 years. The CEO's annual gala was in full swing, a glittering affair of suits and champagne, and Tom had been summoned, not to clean a spill, but to play the grand piano on stage. It was a joke, a cruel jab from a mid-level manager who'd spotted the quiet janitor humming to himself in the break room weeks ago. "Hey, janitor, you think you're Beethoven? Show us what you got." The room had erupted in laughter, and now, here he was, heart pounding, the weight of 100 eyes pressing down on him. Tom wasn't a performer. He was a single dad, a widower, a man who scrubbed floors to pay for his daughter Lily's asthma treatments and the rent on their cramped one-bedroom apartment. At 42, his life was a blur of mops, hospital bills, and bedtime stories read under a flickering bulb. Music? That was a ghost from another life, one he'd buried when his wife, Sarah, died 5 years ago. But the crowd was waiting, their smirks sharp as knives, and the piano gleamed under the spotlight like a challenge he couldn't refuse. He took a shaky step forward, his worn sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. The manager, Greg, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug grin plastered across his face. Even the CEO, Ms. Eleanor Hart, watched from the front row, her expression unreadable. Tom's throat tightened. He could walk away, retreat to the safety of his cart, but something in him stirred, a flicker of defiance, or maybe desperation. He thought of Lily, her wide brown eyes and her belief that her dad could do anything. For her, he'd face this. He sat at the piano, the bench creaking under his weight. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling. The last time he'd played was at Sarah's funeral, a halting rendition of her favorite song, Claire de Lune. He hadn't touched a piano since. The crowd's whispers grew louder, a mix of amusement and impatience. Tom closed his eyes, shutting them out. He saw Sarah smile, heard Lily's laughter, felt the weight of every late-night shift and every bill he couldn't pay. His fingers pressed down. The first notes were soft, tentative, like a whisper in a storm. But as they flowed, they gained strength, weaving into a melody that was both haunting and alive. It was no classical piece, no polished performance. It was a song he'd written in his head over years of grief and grit, a wordless story of loss, love, and stubborn hope. The auditorium fell silent, the snickers dying away. Greg's grin faltered. Miss Hart leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly. Tom's playing wasn't perfect. His fingers stumbled once or twice, rusty from disuse, but the raw emotion in each note carried the room. It was the sound of a man who'd lost everything and kept going, who'd scrubbed toilets and held his daughter through asthma attacks, who'd found beauty in the cracks of a broken life. When he finished, the final note lingered, heavy and pure, and for a moment, no one moved. Then Ms. Hart stood, clapping slowly, tears streaking her face. The room followed, a wave of applause that shook Tom to his core. He stood, dazed, as Greg slunk lower in his seat. Miss Hart approached, her voice unsteady. "Who are you?" she asked, not with judgment, but with awe. Tom's life hadn't always been this way. He'd grown up in a small town, the son of a mechanic and a schoolteacher, with a gift for music that had once promised a different path. In high school, he'd won competitions, his fingers dancing across keys with a grace that made teachers whisper about Juilliard. But life had other plans. He met Sarah at 19, a bright-eyed art student who loved his music as much as she loved him. They married young, dreamed big, and planned a life filled with concerts and canvases. Lily came along when Tom was 25, a tiny bundle of joy who made every struggle worth it. Then came the diagnosis. Sarah's cancer was aggressive, stealing her in less than a year. Tom was 37, Lily was 12, and the world he'd known collapsed. Medical bills piled up, his music dreams faded, and he took the janitor job at Hart Enterprises to keep them afloat. It was steady, if soul-crushing, long hours, low pay, and coworkers like Greg who saw him as invisible. Lily's asthma worsened, each hospital visit a reminder of how little control he had. Music became a memory, too painful to touch, until tonight. The gala changed everything. Miss Hart, a woman known for her steel, invited Tom to her office the next day. He arrived, expecting a pat on the back or maybe a small bonus. Instead, she offered him a chance, a scholarship fund for employees' children, with Lily as the first recipient. "I looked into your file," she said, her voice soft. "You've been here 15 years, never late, never complained. And last night, you reminded me what this company's supposed to stand for." She also offered him a new role, part-time facilities work, part-time music instructor for the company's community outreach program. It came with a raise, enough to cover Lily's treatments and more. But the path wasn't easy. Tom's first challenge was self-doubt. Could he teach? Could he play again without breaking? He spent nights practicing in the company's rec room, his fingers stiff, his heart heavy with memories of Sarah. Lily helped, sitting beside him, her small hands mimicking his on an imaginary keyboard. "You're still good, Dad," she'd say, and he'd push through another hour. Then there was Greg. The manager, humiliated by Tom's performance, doubled down, spreading rumors that Tom had faked his talent or was angling for attention. Co-workers whispered, some siding with Greg out of loyalty or jealousy. Tom ignored them, but it stung. One day, Greg confronted him in the break room, sneering, "You think you're some big shot now? You're still just the janitor." Tom's temper flared, but he thought of Lily and walked away. Resolution came unexpectedly. Greg's own team turned on him, tired of his bullying. He was demoted, and Tom's quiet dignity won the respect of those who doubted him. Teaching was another hurdle. Tom's students, kids from underserved neighborhoods, were skeptical of the janitor teacher. He won them over by sharing his story, playing for them, and listening to theirs. One boy, Jamal, reminded Tom of himself, talented but trapped by circumstance. Tom fought for Jamal, securing him a spot in a local music program, just as Miss Hart had done for Lily. The biggest challenge was Lily's health. Her asthma flared during a cold winter, landing her in the hospital for a week. Tom barely slept, balancing work, teaching, and bedside vigils. He played for her on a small keyboard he brought to the hospital, soft melodies that calmed her breathing. The new job's insurance covered better treatments, and by spring, Lily was stronger, her laughter filling their apartment again. Months later, Tom stood on the same gala stage, this time by choice. He played a new piece, one he'd written for Sarah and Lily, with Jamal and other students joining him. The crowd, including Ms. Hart and even a chastened Greg, rose in a standing ovation. Tom looked out, seeing Lily in the front row, her eyes shining. He'd faced ridicule, doubt, and fear, but he'd found his music again, and with it, a purpose. Life wasn't perfect. Bills still loomed, and grief never fully faded. But Tom had rebuilt something beautiful from the ashes. He taught, he played, and he showed Lily that even in the darkest moments, there was light to be found. The audience that once laughed now saw him for who he was, not just a janitor, but a father, a musician, a survivor. As the applause faded, Tom took a deep breath. He'd turned a cruel joke into a triumph, not for fame or revenge, but for the people he loved and the ones he'd inspired. His story wasn't just his. It was a reminder that every person, no matter how invisible, carries a spark that can light up the world.